another video from Self-Taught HD. I'm G, and today we're going to be creating something pretty simple, but I think that it'll be pretty helpful for anyone who is getting their portfolio ready. So it's a pretty simple app, but I think it's going to allow you to show any new employer a few basic but very important aspects of web development. So we're going to be creating a stopwatch. Now, there's a few different components to the stopwatch. I'm going to be doing this in Vanilla Javascript. I'm not even going to be prototyping the classes or anything like that. I'm going to be straight up just creating functions and creating click events, and in a more I would say in the longer way, rather than the short way. So let's get started. I won't be covering the simple HTML and really covering too much about what and how these click events, or what these click events are, or what these functions are going to be. But I will be covering that in a future video. So let's get started. Let me just show you what we are going to be building really quickly. So this is the stopwatch right here. It's going to stop, obviously. It's going to start the watch as well. It's going to count up, and you can stop it as well, like I just said, and it can restart. So now it's reset, you can start it again. So it is pretty simple. It has milliseconds, which I've kind of cut down. I know it's 1,000 milliseconds to 1 second, but I wanted only two positions here, so I just kind of divided it by 10. So it makes it pretty simple, or divided it by 100. All right, so let's actually create this. Let's restart that. All right, so I already have it built out here. What I'm going to be doing is I'm actually going to kind of copy over some of this, just because it's not as necessary for me to cover these, or I can cover them in a more detailed video if you guys would like. You definitely can comment below if you want me to go over any one specific thing, and I don't want this video to be too long, but I will explain as much as I can. All right, so here we have a directory already, so let's go ahead and pull up the terminal in our VS Code. That's my preferred code editor, and let's touch an index.html. Okay. All right, so we have that right now. Let's also touch it's up to you what you want to call your script files, but I prefer calling it either script or main. So let's go with main today, and let's also touch a style.css file. All right, so we got our 3 main files, and really that's all you need. It's going to be simple. This is going to be straightforward HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. We will be using a CDN that's going to really make this look really nice. As you can see, these colors and the functionality when you click, there's a little the cursor changes, as you can see here. It also highlights. These ones don't, but you can see the shadow change. So the CDN that we're going to be using is called Materialize. Actually, we can Materialize CSS. Spelled that wrong, but it's pretty simple. You go to get started, but before we do that, let's just create the boilerplate. So in VS Code, if you just do exclamation point and then with Emmet, it will, if you tab, it will actually give you a nice boilerplate here. So let's call this my stopwatch 2, and let's go ahead and bring over these files. So we have our script file, and Emmet is the best in VS Code. I will also say you want to use async here, just because it actually the JavaScript is pretty small, especially when you're bringing over a CDN. It's going to load a little bit slower. So the JavaScript is going to load before the the HTML and CSS load. So I recommend that you put async here, or you can obviously put your script tag at the bottom of your body. So it's up to you. I recommend this way, just it's a little bit more professional. So let's go ahead and put our main JS file here. Obviously it's in the same directory, so you do not need to put a directory on there. And let's add our CSS file. So Emmet is pretty cool that it will just throw in the style.css all in one, so it really makes it much faster for you to type. I will move this above, actually below. Alright, next step is to bring over Materialize. So if you go to materializecss.com and then click Get Started, you will, if you scroll down, you'll be able to download Materialize, but I recommend you just do the CDN. If you are going to make this a offline application, then maybe you want to download it, but it's a pretty large file, and I don't really recommend you do that. Most likely you're going to have internet wherever you're going to be pulling this up, so I would just recommend you use the CDN. If not, you can actually download it. It's up to you. So once we have that and we save, we can actually now open this up, and I'm going to open it up actually with Live Server. If you've never heard of Live Server, it's actually a really nice what is it called? Extension on VS Code that auto reloads your pages. So it's pretty cool. You don't have to constantly click refresh. As soon as you save your index HTML, it's gonna auto refresh your page. Or actually, I think if you save anything, it's gonna auto refresh when it finds a change. The next thing we're going to do is actually create Favicon. So I already have a Favicon chosen here. It's pretty simple. It's just a link tag. So if you do link tag, not HTML, let's just create a normal link. So in the rel property, we're going to call icon. And then we also need to create a type, and the type is going to be the type of image slash and then the image type. So this is an SVG, and we're going to copy over this SVG that we have here. Okay. All right. Got that. As soon as we save, notice that on this stopwatch 2, it updated. All right, so now we're done with the head. Now let's jump into the body. So for the body, there are a few things we want to create. So first, let's create a div. Make it simple. Let's give it an ID of stopwatch. So this will be the wrapping div. We're going to center the div. So Materialize allows you to kind of take action or create styles with classes. So those classes exist within the Materialize style sheet, and when you obviously set an element to that class, it's gonna take on all of its properties. We can also use some of the styling to kind of create a little margin at the top, and obviously auto, so we can actually put it in the middle. So once we have that, now we can go ahead and create stopwatch 2. My stopwatch 2. That's what I'll call it. My stopwatch 2. Alright, awesome. It's pretty cool. Live server. It's reloading just fine. Now we have the main div and the H1 set. Let's go ahead and create the div that's going to be holding all of these properties for the stopwatch. And let's actually just go ahead and create all the divs necessary. So we're going to need a div for the hour. So let's give it an ID of hours. Actually, I'm going to link this in the description below, but I'm gonna go ahead and just copy this, and you guys can also do the same. just because it's going to take some more time, and we should jump into the JavaScript more than this. All right, the next step is actually pretty simple. We're going to create 3 divs, and if you do Option Shift down arrow, it's going to allow you to copy down the line that you're on. We're going to create an ID, and this one's going to be called the stopper, and this one will be the starter. Very creative. And this one will be the resetter. Reset. I don't know if that's really even a word. Actually, let's just call it reset. All right. Now, like I've said with Materialize, we can actually create, give these elements styles with just putting actual properties in here. You actually would need to get familiar. You need to familiarize with yourself with Materialize, but actually the documentation here is actually pretty good. You can find a lot of things that you need. You can search for it here too. So I think it would be worth your while to actually go there. But with BTN, we actually create a button, and with a color, we can actually set any color that we want. So. And with resetter, let's just leave it as the normal BTN, or we can actually call it in blue if we wanted to. So when we do that, see, there's nothing in there, but we can actually put stop here, and start, and reset. As soon as we save this, it's going to refresh, and now we have all 3. Now there's nothing that's happening with these because we haven't connected anything to it, but notice how we have everything we need here. So once we have our HTML done, we can jump to our main JavaScript file. So I'm going to use this again as kind of a way to I'm going to use this as kind of instructions, but really it's more of letting you guys see that you can just make this in a simple way, and you can also make it in a more difficult way. So the simplest way would be, let's create variables for each element, I guess, of this stopwatch. So the hour, the minute, the second, and the milliseconds. We're going to call it microseconds, but let's just think about them like milliseconds. And then we want to also create variables for each one of these buttons, and we want to create variables that are going to be keeping track of the actual intervals. Okay, so let's start with the variables for the elements. So the hour, the minute, and the second. All right, so let's just call it hour count. Right. All right, and let's just copy this. And hour count is going to equal 0. All right. So you can do kind of a stacked variable declaration. So that means you don't have to use let constantly. So that's what I'm doing right now. I'm declaring these I'm declaring these variables and setting these variables at the same time, but using let once or const once, or you can var. I would recommend let, but all right. Continuing on, we're gonna keep doing this. So we're gonna do sec count. It's confusing, but whatever. And let's actually call it mil count here. And let's set it to 0 and then semicolon to end that. All right, next thing. Now let's create a variable and set those variables for our different buttons. So for the starter, we have to use document.get element by ID, and then we have an element called starter, right? And once we've set that, we can actually do this again. We don't have to use let constantly like this. We can just go ahead and create a stopper here, and here we can also get ID, and remember the ID that we used. All right, and then you can also create an reset. Maybe that's just the way that I want to call it. I don't want to get it confused with reset if that is some kind of keyword. All right, and I think we just called it reset. All right, I don't like how this is breaking, so let's just do that. Let's do that. And now we can do a semicolon to end that. And let's create a variable that's going to keep track of our intervals. And that's very important because we're going to be using a built-in JavaScript function called setInterval, and it's going to be counting the intervals. Actually, it's going to be counting how long the interval goes for. So it will just allow us to almost do a for loop until we clear it. And when we clear it, the interval stops. And then when we start it, the interval starts again. So that's kind of the methodology that I'm going to be using. There are other ways to do this. You could possibly use a while loop. You can use many other. You can create it many other ways, but I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible. So we are just going to create if-else statements that are just going to be checking the different hours and what the interval is at, and it's going to be running just fine. I think it works nicely. It could break, but hey, you can always improve on this. But this is just me trying to show you guys a simple way of doing this. So let's create the main function right now, and the main function is going to be start the stopwatch. Okay. So let's just call it start stopwatch. Okay. And within this function, let's get every single one of these. So just know these are the minutes, the seconds, and the microseconds, right? We want to capture those. Let's start with that. So we want to call on document.get, and if people are having trouble with finding these documents here, the easiest way to do it is if you inspect this page and you go to console, and just know document, when you type it in, it actually highlights what you're selecting. Document is the whole document, and if you do a dot, there's a lot of methods here that you can call. So there's children, for example. It's gonna be the HTML tree, the collection. There's body. There's a lot that you can call on. And if you scroll all the way to G, there's all of these get methodologies that you can, or methods that you can call on the document, which is the entire, this entire page here. When you do get document by ID, all you need to know is the ID of this element. So if I just wanted to return this div, then I can. But let's say I wanted to return this H1. I wouldn't use get by ID because the H1 doesn't have an ID, but you could use get by tag name. And easiest way to do that is you just set this tag name in there, H1. And if you said this H1.inner, or you say H1 and then you look in this HTML collection, you will be able to see the H1. And if you scroll down here to inner text, you can see that it actually shows you the text. So you can actually go this, but because it's HTML collection, you actually have to select that one that's within this array. It's actually an array. The HTML collection is going to be an array, and then you can do inner text, and you get my stopwatch too. So that's what we're going to be doing, but we're going to be capturing get by ID. So we're going to do it to the hours, and we're going to be getting, and because we're using it by ID, remember each element can only have, or within the entire document, you can only have, sorry, just remember, within the document, IDs are unique, meaning that you cannot have multiple elements with the same ID. If you do, it will only select the first one. So because of that, we're here able to select the hours document. Here we're going to know that it's going to be this one. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually set it to this hour count variable. Because hour count is actually a number, we also want to set it to a string because it's numbers aren't going to have the zeros in front, so it's going to be a little bit easier. And then you want to pad start it, and what pad start will do is it will actually just add a zero when depending on how long you want that number to be. So if you said you wanted this number to be 3 numbers long, all the way up to 100, pad start will add zeros in front of the empty number. I think it makes more sense if I show you guys. So simple way of doing this might be actually to go ahead and just do this. And here what we can do is we can inspect it again, go to the console again, and then set this to, let's say 7, right? Let's set that to 7. Notice how the 0 disappears from 7. But if I was to come here and get this and then set that to 7 and put this here, do this. What am I doing? Do that. Now you can see this isn't number 7 anymore. It is actually 07. It added the 0 at the end and it set it to 2. Now if I wanted to actually set this to 3, then now it's 3 digits, and then the places where there isn't a digit, it's going to add a 0. If we set this to 10, now you're like, oh well, it's not gonna, you're not gonna need that 0 because it's 2 digits. But look at that. Because I'm telling pad start, I want a 3-digit string, or a string that with a length of 3. It's going to add the 0 in the front. All right. Now that I've explained that, I'm going to move on and do this a little bit quicker because I think we're spending a lot of time here, and I think we have a few things to do. Here, let's put mins, and here we're putting sex, and here we're putting, unfortunately, micro sex. All right, and this is going to be min sex, and this is going to be sex count, or min count, and this is going to be milli count. Okay, now that we have that, let's go up here and let's create our if statement. So the first if statement, it's going to look at the milliseconds, and it's going to look at whether it's equal to 99 and whether the seconds are actually not equal to 60. This is important. You don't want to do 59 and you don't want to do 100 because it actually will change. It actually will show 60, and you don't actually. It will change before it gets to count through 59. So before it counts through 59 seconds, it will change to 0 and that's not what we want. We want it to count through 59 but not count 60, so that's why we're doing this. And in milliseconds, we don't want it to count to 100. We want it to get to 99, and as soon as it gets to 99, we want the seconds to change. So milliseconds is so quick that at 99 you don't really need it to count to 100. So and I also like the fact that it's a length of 2, so I really don't want it to count all the way up to 100 as well. All right, so that's the first if statement. Now if that becomes true, what I wanted to do is I want to set the milliseconds to 0, and I want to count up on the seconds. So think about it. When the milliseconds gets to 99, I want to add 1 to the seconds. Okay, but if that's not true, that means if milliseconds has not gotten to 99, I want to count up milliseconds constantly. I want it to keep going. All right, so that's the first if statement. The next if statement is going to look at seconds. Now, I know we've already looked at seconds here, but we're trying to determine whether it should count seconds up or it should count milliseconds up. But here what we're going to be doing is we're going to be checking whether it should count seconds up, if it should count minutes up, or if it should continue to count seconds up here. So we're going to be checking whether the seconds are equal to 60. And these 3 equal signs are actually strict equal checking, meaning that it's checking whether it's a number and whether it's actually equal to 60. So it's strict, it's checking the type as well. So you can't look at a string and a 60. A string of that's in quotation 60, like this. When you do a triple equals, these will not equal each other. But when you do a double equals, these will. Remember, double equals is checking, it's checking whether they're equal to one another. But in JavaScript, when you check like this, it's not looking for type. This is a string, this is a number. It's not looking for type. So you need a triple equals, which will check the type as well. These two are not equal in this case. In this case, they are equal. So just be wary of that. Unlike other languages, JavaScript isn't as strict when it comes to that. So if seconds equals 60, what I wanted to do is I want this to set seconds to 0. Okay, just like we did milliseconds, seconds here. And then what I wanted to do is I actually wanted to count minutes up. Because now seconds have gotten to 60, I want the minutes to count up. But we wouldn't need an else here, because this is pretty much the else of this. If this isn't true, this is going to be true. Okay, so this is already counting the seconds up. We don't need to do an else statement to count it up as well. Okay, next step. We're going to be looking at minutes. Now you can continue to do this for days, for weeks, for years, or whatever, but we're just doing a stopwatch for, and we're going to stop at hours. So this is going to be the last one that we do. All right, so this if statement is going to be looking at the minute, and if minutes is greater than 59, or 60, really, I just wanted to change it up a little bit. If it's greater than 59, what we want to do is we want minutes to equal 0, just like we've done all through there. We want minutes to equal to 0, and then we want to count hours up. Okay, so we want to count hours up. Now, we need to do a quick check. This is more of it's not really doing too much of a check, but we want to make sure that these aren't being or like when it gets to minutes, it's not skipping over. So we want to do it else if, meaning if this isn't true, then I want you to check if minutes count is greater than 59 and that was a accidental Python right there. And if minute count is less than 0. It has to, if it's less than 59 and greater than 0. So if that's true, then I want you to count minutes up. It looks redundant, it might be redundant, but it actually works for this case. So, all right, we're done with that. Now let's get into the juicier portion. So now we're done with that. What we want to do is we want to create event listeners, meaning click event listeners for these. When you click on it, we want it to do something. The most important part is this starter part. So remember, we've set our starter, and our starters, we're going to add an event listener. Now let me show you what an event listener does. So when you go here, you can actually, just like, remember how I told you you can use document get element by ID, and then we call this the starter, so we can get that. So once we get the starter, we can add an event listener. Okay, and we can add a bunch of event listeners. There's a bunch of types, but let's just do a click event listener. And the first is going to be the argument, or the actual event that you want it to listen for. The second is going to be a function that you create. Now within this function, we can actually set an argument here, and then we can, how about we console log the argument, the event, this argument is going to be the event, and then dot the target. The target is going to be the target that you're clicking on, okay? So, did I spell something wrong? I might have. Let's do that. Let's just set this to a variable. Let start, or how about that? Starter. Okay, let's just do it this way. Do it the easy way. Let's just capture. Oh, I see what I did. It's actually start, not starter. Start, and then starter. Easiest way will be to just capture it this way. Okay, and then from starter, we can actually just add an event listener like this, like that. Console log e.target. That will I think we needed something else. See, it does matter. Spelling mistakes do really affect you, so make sure that you're not spelling anything wrong, because if you do, then this will do it. So it says undefined, but as soon as we click here, notice that you get an event listener that's returning the target. So basically what I'm trying to say is this actually now has a function that's going to be fired or triggered every single time you click on it. So once we have that, let's just go jump in here and call it starter. I spelled it wrong here. Let's call that starter, and the event that we're going to look for again is going to be a click event, and the function we're going to call on E here. We're going to do that, close with a semicolon, and we're going to copy this down 3 times. All right. We're going to change up the different. This is going to be the stopper, and it's going to look for stop. And this is the resetter, and it's going to look for, stopper and reset. All right, now each time I would like to console log just, this is the best way to, in my opinion, to understand what this, whether your buttons are working or not, your events are working or not. So let's refresh here. Let's do start. Okay, it's actually calling on this one. Stop, it's actually calling on stop. Reset, it's actually calling on reset. So it's working. All right, now, important thing that you want to do if you don't want your window to refresh accidentally or because of issues, is do this e.prevent default. E.prevent default will stop your window from refreshing when you're firing that event. All right, so do that, and let's just copy that for each one. I'll leave the console logs in here. All right, so with starter, we are going to be setting an interval, like I said. So the start interval variable that we have up here, we want to set that variable to this function called setInterval. And what setInterval will take in is a function that we have here, which is the stopwatch function, and it will constantly run this function like a for loop until you clear this interval. And you want to set the timeout, meaning how long you want this interval to go. If you leave it blank, I believe it's gonna run at like 1,000. Well, it's going to be a millisecond, so it's going to be running once every millisecond, and that's not what we want. We want it to run once every, I think it's 100 milliseconds. Once every 10 milliseconds. So we want it to run once every 10 milliseconds. So that is going to run once every 10 milliseconds. But before we actually let this run, what we want to do is we want to also create a way to clear the interval. So we want to clear the interval, and you want to clear the interval by clearing this this variable. The interval gets set into a variable, and then you want to clear that variable. So let's just refresh and let's try this. All right, so something is going, as you guys can see here, it's running, but it doesn't have an inner text of null, and it says line 31, so we made a mistake here. Mins is not actually here, so mins is not minutes, it's hours, minutes, and seconds. So we want to fix that. And the last one is microseconds. I think that one's correct. Alright. So let's save that. Let's just refresh and start. So inner text of null 33. Stop. So 33 is actually microseconds. I was wrong there. Okay, now let's try this. Look at that. Beautiful. It's running. It keeps going. What if we actually set the seconds to 55 seconds? Okay. How will it change to 1 minute? Look at that. But what if we set minutes to 59 and seconds to 58? How would it change? It changed to an hour. What if we set hour to 59 minutes? Oh, I guess actually we have to change that. hours to 59, minutes to 59, and seconds to 58. What would happen? Look at that, 60 hours. Doesn't really make any sense, but it works. So that is it pretty much, right? But now we want to reset everything. We want to reset everything that we have. So we want to go down here to resetter, and we want to call on all of the variables. So hour, minutes, seconds, milliseconds. We want to call on all of those, and we want to actually set them back to 0. And the best way to do it, let's just copy this up. And then, not that we're done, and then what we want to do is we want to actually copy these, and we want to set these to 0 as well, because remember, we actually want to set them to the string 0, double zeros, as they were when we refresh here. When we refresh, you see how there's our double zeros? We want to set these to double zeros as well, but a string of zeros, right? So we want to set them to that, okay? So let's just copy this down. Okay, now we can get rid of these console logs. Let me just go ahead and comment them out. And for the most part, we're actually done. And this is the actual, this is the whole application. Let's start and see how it goes. So we'll start. And like we've done before, let's set this to 58 seconds. It goes to set this to 58 and set this to 58, and it's working. Now I said we can work on how these are shaking. Oh, and also let's stop it, let's start it, let's stop it again, reset it. So one other thing I do recommend with your resetter is to actually go ahead and copy over this clear interval. I think if you know, it actually helps you not accidentally, I'll actually show you guys. So as it's running, when you reset it, it's going to just continue running. Now you have to stop it and then reset. Instead of doing that, if you actually put the clear interval within your reset, then when you start it and then reset, it actually clears the interval and resets at the same time. So that really does help you. This is the video. This is the application. If you guys have any questions, make sure you leave it in the comments below. If you really like this video, go ahead and hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button and the bell icon if you guys want to receive notifications when I post another video. I'm going to be coming out with more of these small little projects to kind of just fill out your portfolio, fill out your GitHub, and make you look like a much better developer, much more well-rounded developer. Even though these are tiny projects, they really do show your skills, your ability, and everything that you actually want employers to see. So, if you guys have any questions as well, make sure you leave it in the comments below. This has been G from Self-Taught HD. I hope you love this video. I will see you in the next one. Peace.